I don't take nothing that a doctor don't prescribe. I just take Paxil, Xanax, Zoloft, Flomax, morphine, Valtrex, Flonase, Plavix, codeine, Zyrtec, Zoma, Zantac, Ultram, Zocor, Zipro, Prozac, dopamine, Demerol, Lexapro, Tylenol, Vicodin, Lyrica, Lipitor, and Adderall, but I don't do no drugs, man.
All right, hi guys, it's Dr. Beard. I'm Paul, and we're going to continue our fundamental podcast series. The last one we did was on hydration. Today we're going to just be talking about nutrition and diet basics, because there's a lot of people making things harder than it needs to be.
Yep.
And I know there's a lot of confusion out there about what to eat, because there's so much information, right? There's you get on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, and it's just all kinds of information, and much of it is contradicting each other, and people are like, I don't know what to eat anymore.
Most of it, they're trying to sell something. So,
well, true that. Or that you've got these extremes of like, oh, you only eat meat, or you take the other extreme, vegan. It's got to be nothing but plants. And I'm telling you, there's something in the middle. But I will throw this out there. There are times when avoiding certain foods is probably a good idea. It's more of an intervention because of what's going on in your body, and particularly the state of your gut health. But those are short-term, temporary interventions. But generally speaking, God put everything on this planet for us to consume. And our diets need to be balanced. And
wide variety,
and a wide variety of food, which we will talk more about, eating seasonally and how to source your foods to make sure you're getting the best quality. But I want you to sit back, relax, and understand that it's not rocket science. Okay. So the first point I want to make is just simply, I want you to focus on eating real, non-processed foods. Okay. Can we just accept that? Let's just eat real food. And unfortunately, sometimes we don't even know what real is anymore. And I ask my patients, like, was it around 100 years ago? If it wasn't, I don't know. Probably should want to avoid that. Or if you have a package of food and it has a huge paragraph of ingredients, probably not a good choice.
And most of that's preservatives.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these stores have mandates that it has to have a shelf life of 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, like Walmart, it has to have a shelf life of 2 years. If your food has a shelf life of 2 years,
don't eat it.
That is not food. Okay. And that is the case for much of what is in the grocery stores today. It simply is not real food. It is just a bunch of preservatives, additives. They've got food dyes, high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners. You do not need to be eating those.
Every one of those components is an adulteration of something natural,
right,
to make it cheaper and have a longer shelf life.
Right. And it's just exactly. And that's the reason those things are there, is to increase the shelf life. If your food sits there on a counter and doesn't change for a week, it is probably an adulterated food. Would you say?
I would say so.
Yeah. So again, let's just try to focus on eating real food, staying away from the additives, preservatives, food dyes, high fructose corn syrup, which this is a new thing. Your body doesn't even recognize what that is because it's so new. And so it sees it as this foreign entity, and it will attack it as such. And when it does that, it sets off inflammation and an immune cascade throughout your body. So your gut does not like it. Of course, your gut is your immune system. It's the first place where your body encounters foreign substances, and it will recognize things as, oh, this is a good thing. This is not a bad thing. And it will respond.
Or I don't know what this is, so I'm going to treat it as a bad thing.
Exactly. I don't know what it is. I've never seen it before. I gotta attack it to get rid of it. And that's where inflammation starts to come into play.
And and GMO is a lot of that, because GMO is inserting genes in order to accomplish, usually, this, even though it goes into processed foods, but it also goes into vegetables, like their tomatoes are GMOs with latex to have longer shelf life.
Yeah, they actually insert a latex gene into the tomato so that it's used as basically to prevent pests.
Well, make shippability, and again, shelf life.
And shelf life, yeah.
That's those pale red ones you see.
Yeah.
They're tasteless. It's just not even good to eat.
And then a lot of people who have latex allergies will react badly to tomatoes that have this latex gene that's been inserted into them. Yeah. We had a patient who was eating tomatoes and having problems, and we realized that she had a latex allergy, and she was eating,
lots of tomatoes
that were not organic heirloom tomatoes that did not have this gene inserted into
and I'll
them.
explain all that in the sourcing video.
So the glyphosate thing is a whole other issue, and that it's the you want to choose non-GMO foods.
Yeah, because that is a plant. All your major row crops like wheat, soybeans, corn. Those in the United States they've inserted the Roundup gene into it to allow you to spray Roundup to get rid of the weeds, which increases the production. But that plant is uptaking the glyphosate Roundup. I mean, Roundup, Monsanto said, oh, it's safe. You can drink it. There's a lot of lawsuits now about the cancer because of Roundup. So they lied again. And
imagine that.
Yeah, imagine that. So it's so prevalent because all of the major, and this is what goes into processed foods because it's the cheaper.
And it doesn't just stay in there in that row crop. It gets into other places nearby too that can contaminate what they're growing, even though they're trying to be, not use pesticides and Roundup and things like that. It can contaminate other
that's why
growing areas.
Most of your farmer patients have high glyphosate levels because they're exposed to it environmentally.
Right.
Not that they're ingesting it, but it's the water, the air. All these things are sprayed airily.
But you can also get it by ingesting it, because I know there are ways you can test for glyphosate levels, and I've done this on people who eat processed foods versus those who try to eat very, they're growing their own food. They're not using pesticides. They're picking non-GMO foods, and their glyphosate levels tend to be almost non-existent.
So choose foods that have, if you're going to eat a processed food, ones that have very few ingredients and have the non-GMO label.
Which, there's some fraud that's entering into the whole labeling issue.
It's the best you can do, though.
But it's the best you can do. And there's also, not everything needs to be organic. I think it's best whenever you can choose organic varieties, please do so. But just know not everything has to be organic. There's something called the Dirty Dozen, and you can look that up. It's also on that website we mentioned.
And the Clean 15.
And the Clean 15. It's something that it's on the website we mentioned in the hydration podcast. The Environmental Working Group.org, EWG.org, is a resource that you can use to learn more about the Dirty Dozen, the Clean 15, clean water, toxin exposures in your bath and beauty products and home products and all of that. It's an excellent resource. Yeah,
for those of y'all who garden, why it's the case, because there are certain plants that are very subject to pest and they require a lot more.
Right.
And so it's a lot more difficult to grow them, and that's why they're expensive. But if you're going to eat them, adhere to those rules, and that'll save you a lot of problems.
Because this stuff is toxic to your body, and it will accumulate and cause a lot of things to go awry the more and more that you accumulate in your body. If you're accumulating it more than your body's able to detox it out, you're going to have a high toxic burden.
And the GMO stuff, they're changing the presentation. We mentioned earlier that when your body does not recognize something, your body doesn't like it. And so even though they say, oh, it's basically the same thing, it's not. The body recognizes it's been altered.
Even minute.
I mean, they're doing
changes.
They're doing lab-grown meat, folks, and that it's getting so ridiculous. And yeah, it's kind of similar, but it's not exactly the same. And I mean, even subtle differences, like about 150 years ago, we went from the Jersey cow to a Holstein cow, and that changed the presentation of the casein in milk.
The casein is a milk protein.
And there are a lot of people who cannot tolerate that because of that different casein protein. And that's just a natural difference.
Right.
And imagine what you're doing. You're doing gene splicing and putting it in. The science is fascinating. It's easy to say it's the same, but your body, it's not. Your body doesn't recognize it. Bare minimum is causing an inflammatory response. Worst case, we don't know. It could be a lot worse.
Yes. And so the next thing I want you to consider and consider heavily is that change the mindset of that, eating, reading labels for calorie content and eating based on calories or dieting in general. Your food is information, okay? It's not simply just a matter of calories or macros, all right? It is providing your cells information. Food contains vitamins, minerals, fatty acids, amino acids, antioxidants, and other phytonutrients that basically tell your cells and your DNA what to do. And bad information is going to be expressed at the cellular level in a bad way. Your DNA is going to express itself in a very negative and harmful way for your body. If you eat food that has good information, your cells are going to respond in kind. It's going to have a positive expression and do what it needs to do. Your body you've got thousands and thousands of chemical reactions occurring in your body right now, and those chemical reactions will continue out the day, and they need information to carry out the things they need to do to make your body function optimally. So if you're putting if you're putting really high processed foods and GMO foods into your body, your DNA is simply not going to like that, and your cells are going to not express themselves in a way that's going to be beneficial to you.
And inflammation has so many problems.
Oh, inflammation. Yeah. Food is one thing that it has so much power as far as what it can do for your body. It can either harm you or it can help you. And you really need to start looking at your food like, is this going to help me and my body? Is this going to be nourishing for my cells? Or is this going to cause a lot of inflammation? And which brings me to this example that I like to use for people is the Coca-Cola versus avocado. They basically have the same amount of calories, all right? But one is going to cause inflammation and metabolic derangements, and the other is going to cause anti-inflammatory properties and provide harmony for your cells. I'll let you think about which one is causing the harmony and the anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, people want to focus on dieting, and losing weight should never be the goal. It should be about being healthy.
You're right.
But you can have the same amount of calories and lose weight on one.
Or even more. You can eat even more calories and still lose weight because what you're giving your body is helping your cells do what they need to do to function.
Yeah, diet people think of it as food restriction, but let's call it your food plan instead of calling it a diet. Your food plan the caloric intake can be the same or even more on one side, and you'll lose weight or gain weight based on inflammation.
And we see this all the time when we work with patients who are wanting to lose weight, which is when you are carrying extra weight or you're having trouble losing weight, that is a symptom that your body is out of balance. And there's a lot of inflammation and metabolic derangements going on. And what you have been eating could be a big factor in that, but there's a lot of other things to consider too, which we'll talk about later. So stop counting calories and start thinking of your food as information. And, avoid the processed foods. I think most of us understand to do that. But, I have a lot of patients who also go out to eat a lot. Take out. And even though it's very difficult to eat healthy and provide your body with nourishing anti-inflammatory foods when you're eating out, because I promise you those restaurants are using the cheapest products they can find to produce a profit. Mm-hmm. And of course, the restaurant business is difficult. It's hard to make a profit. Yeah. And the food costs have gone up so much now that they are really struggling. So they're going to be using the cheapest quality products they can find to produce a product. And you need to remember that unless they say otherwise on their menus that it is grass-fed, it is non-GMO, wild caught, pasture raised. They need to say that explicitly.
Yeah. And unfortunately, most people are not willing to spend the money for that. And I have a lot of friends in the restaurant industry, and they say, hey, I've tried it both ways, and people are just not willing to pay for the difference. And probably because they don't know how important it is.
Right.
And this is the reason like places like Taco Bell even exist. Is just cheap.
Oh, I see the drive-through line in those places, and it just makes me cringe.
Yeah, I mean,
If they realize they are literally, you're driving your car through a drive-through to pick up a bag that is literally poison.
yeah, there's not a bit of good information in that food.
No, it's nothing but bad information. And I can't even tell you last time I counted a calorie. I don't look at calories.
And let's go over some of the food delivery services. Just be really careful. Vet them, folks. Find one that has wild caught, non-GMO, grass-fed stuff,
Cage-free.
and then it's still not great because they have to prepare it, then freeze it, then ship it to you, and it's a lot of other reasons. But I understand time constraints. I understand life gets in the way, but there are a number of companies out there that are pretty good, and you just have to research which ones are best. You use there's a company called Modify Health
There's
sometimes.
one called Modify Health, and they do try to use very high quality ingredients. And so I have used some of their products and tried them before, and some of them are really quite tasty. You just got to be careful.
Tasty for that type of food.
Tasty for that type of food, but for me, I don't.
I spoil you.
I don't. Yeah, and I'm just one of those. Food is not the center of my. It's just not. I don't think about it until I'm hungry, and that gets me into trouble too. My day's not centered around food, or I'm not even thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. I don't even think about food until I'm hungry.
I have to think about it because I'm the one that does the cooking.
I know you do.
And the way I cook, it takes a little bit of preparation. It really doesn't take any more time. It just takes you have to start things a lot of times. Yeah,
planning.
It's a little planning process. You start things earlier. You're not touching them again. They're just doing their thing. I'm a big fan of the Instapot and things like that. But but
I eat very simply. A piece of sourdough bread that you've made with some avocado and lemon juice and salt and pepper on it. I'm good to go. Or we'll have steak for breakfast sometimes with some butter. I mean, how more simple could that be?
It's pretty good too.
It's pretty good too. So enough about that. The next thing I want to talk about is hunger cues.
If you hear that rumbling in the background, that's not Amy's stomach. There's actually storms moving through.
Praise God, because it has been very dry here and we needed the rain. So I'm not going to be upset about the thunder in the background. So hunger cues, what are they? And most of you have been physiologically hungry, and you know what that feels like, right? It is your stomach growls. You get a little hangry. You might have a mild headache, slight nauseated, tired. That is your body saying, all right, time to give me some fuel me up. And you should do so. You should listen to those hunger cues and go for it. But what's happened today is a lot of people don't even know what it feels like to be hungry anymore, because they constantly snack all day long for whatever reason, boredom, anxiety, it's there, I'm going to eat it.
Yeah.
Or they feel like they're always hungry. And there's a lot of reasons for that we'll go over. Or they're paying attention to the clock on the wall that says, it's noon, time to go eat lunch, even though they may not even be hungry. And so a lot of people just have, they don't know what true hunger feels like anymore, but that can come back. Okay. You can train your body to know what that feels like again. And so, when people in food, these hunger cues are very different than food cravings, right? There's a very big difference between hunger cues and food cravings. I have a lot of patients who have food cravings. Like, I just want to eat carbs and sugar all the time. I can't stop. It's like, and sugar is addictive. Sugar is so addictive. And because it feeds certain parts of our brains that it's just instant satisfaction. And the research behind the sugar addiction is fascinating and scary at the same time. And we are consuming so much more sugar than we have at any time in our lives.
It's absurd.
It is absolutely absurd. And so when you eat sugar too, you can have something called candida overgrowth that develops in your GI tract. And those yeast thrive off of sugar and carbs. That's what their preferred fuel source is. They love it. And so when you eat a lot of sugar and carbs, those yeast grow out of control and they are sitting there in your gut and they're just going, feed me, feed me, I need sugar, I need sugar. And so you're constantly drinking colas.
And it actually is a communication up your vagus nerve to your brain.
Yeah.
So it's not your fault, folks. You need to fix your gut.
Yeah. And it's not even a matter of willpower. It is just like this. It's almost like you cannot stop it. And of course, we have strategies that we help people deal with candida overgrowth. But, that is one physiological reason that these food cravings can occur. Of course, there's things that can go wrong with your HPA axis, which we'll discuss in another episode, that can make you feel hungry when you're really not. But it can also, if you have instability in your blood sugar levels, that can cause all kinds of crazy cravings too. If you're sleep deprived, you tend to load up on carbs the next day because of what stress does to your body, because a lack of sleep is a stress on your body. Medications can do this, like steroids. People who have ever used prednisone or something will tell you that it's just, they were ravenous the whole time they were on these medications.
And not all carbs are created equal. The simple carbs like white bread or a cracker is you can hold it in your mouth just for a few 30 seconds and you'll feel it. It'll taste like sugar because your enzymes in your mouth are already breaking it down.
Right.
And folks, that's just straight sugar as opposed to carbs and acorn squash, which is good information.
Exactly. And it's good information. It's good for your gut. And your gut health really plays a huge role in food cravings because it's so far reaching to all other body systems that are going on. Your body works as a whole. You have to keep remembering that what's good for your gut is good for your brain, is good for your liver, is good for your kidneys, and vice versa. So, and then, we also have people who have no appetite. They're not hungry ever. And when I have a patient like that, I know it's going to be a long road ahead of them. One that is absolutely doable, and we've helped people out of these situations, but that just tells me these people's bodies are in a severe state of HPA axis dysfunction. They have been under a chronic amount of stress for a long period of time, whether it was emotional, physical, mental, or they were just, their diets are horrible, burning the candle at both ends, not sleeping, over-exercising. These people have burned themselves out and they have no appetite.
Tell the listeners real quick what HPA axis is.
The HPA axis is it's the hypothalamus pituitary, they're up here, adrenal axis. So these are organs that communicate with each other, hormonal communicators, and there's negative feedback mechanisms where you maintain a balance. And they're there for a reason, during times of stress. Not all stress is bad. A little bit is good. You have to have it. But when you are chronically stressed for whatever reason, these feedback mechanisms they become dysfunctional. They stop responding.
And the odd thing is the people in that state, we've seen people who are in that severe state of HPA axis dysfunction eating 1,000 calories a day and not able to lose weight. So you're like, not eating is going to be a good thing. Not necessarily. A lot of times it's going to cause you're still not going to lose. And then you're really miserable. You're not giving your body information and you're not losing weight. Right. And that's just.
And everybody's different. And every approach is different. Everybody is their own individual, and you have to take a lot of things into account.
That's why dieting is a losing strategy. There's so many variables you have to figure out first.
If you eat real food and listen to your body, you can just get rid of the word diet.
Mm-hmm. Explain real quick the insulin overshoot. We're talking about simple carbs and complex carbs. Explain that and how that can create chronic inflammation and also ruin your pancreas.
Well, yeah, if you, especially with simple carbs, you eat a bunch and your insulin will go up real quick to deal with that. Your sugar goes up real quick, so your insulin goes up real quick, and it tends to overshoot. And then you crash, and then your body is needing it again. So you eat more sugar. Same thing happens, insulin overshoot, then you crash.
Mhm.
And so you just have these peaks and valleys of, you know,
and those crashes make you hungry.
and those crashes make you hungry. And it also puts you into a state of hyperinsulinemia, which is a stressor on your pancreas. And when you have hyperinsulinemia, and this is one way it occurs, it causes a lot of inflammation in the body. And hyperinsulinemia also occurs because, you know, if your cells aren't simply responsive to the insulin, and that can occur for many different reasons too, you develop hyperinsulinemia. It just that we have enough insulin, just can't get into that cell.
So it's a good reason to avoid simple carbs and go for complex carbs, which almost always corresponds with real food versus processed food.
And you want to, you know, if you're one of those who has trouble with your blood sugars and you know, blood sugar regulation, you really want to pay attention to your carbs. You're either going to want to cut back a lot on if you're eating a bunch of them, or make sure that you have a lot of protein and fat along with it to help maintain more of a normal insulin blood sugar level.
I mean, orange juice versus an orange is a good example of this, right?
Right, because the orange, you know, it doesn't have nearly as much sugar as, you know, a glass of orange juice. It also has fiber and other things in it that will slow down
Those peaks and valleys.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
And I'm not a fan of drinking fruit juices. It's just a big old glass of sugar. They have more sugar in than a cola does.
Yeah, sounds good, but it's
Right.
all right. Let's,
All right.
let's go to traditional eating.
Yes, traditional eating, or sometimes people call this ancestral eating. I don't know if many of you have heard Chris Kresser. He's a functional medicine provider. I think he started out as an acupuncturist, but he has really good information, I think, on ancestral eating and just kind of thinking about how did our ancestors eat? What did they eat and how did they eat? And if you look at that, even if you go back to the time of your grandparents or great grandparents, they ate very differently than how we eat today. Just having conversations with my mom and my grandparents.
It was all organic.
Everything was organic. GMO, you know, didn't even exist back then. They were, everybody had a garden and they were gardening, they were canning, they were raising their own meat, they had raising their own chickens, shooting wild game.
Very little sugar.
Very, very little sugar. We are consuming so much sugar. Oh, it's sickening. And they also were, of course, much more active.
Mm-hmm. Typically ate earlier in the evening and didn't eat first thing in the morning. So they had a bigger break between their meals, which is important, folks, to allow your body to do, as you like to say, take out the trash.
Right.
And if there's food in the food tube, your body allocates resources to handle the food in the food tube. And
versus repairing damage that has occurred in the body.
Yeah.
At the mitochondrial level.
And so most people are eating right before they go to bed, and the first thing they wake up, well, that doesn't allow a lot of time for the body to work and repair.
And there are times, though, when you don't need...
I'm not even talking about fasting. This is just normal, not eating all the time.
They were getting up in the morning. They're going to do their chores, right? They had to do their chores, and then they came back, had a breakfast, and then, you know, they were active throughout the rest of the day. And like you said, their evening meals tend to be earlier, you know, and they tend to go to bed earlier, too. Mm-hmm. They weren't up all night watching Netflix and snacking.
Being bombarded by commercials that tell you to snack.
Right. I mean, food is just, access to food is everywhere.
24/7.
24. You can have people bring you whatever you want, whenever you want, to your doorstep now.
But none of it's good.
And none of it is good. No.
It's all bad information.
You can drive down to the gas station, load up on a bunch of junk. It's just everywhere. And of course, if you live in an office, you know this. There's usually people who have the snack bowl right there full of whatever, candy bars and chocolates and things like that. And you just go buy one and take it right and stick it in your mouth without even thinking. So this is modern times. Mm-hmm. Modernity and convenience, especially with food and food delivery, is really wreaking havoc on our bodies.
Yeah. Poor quality food available all the time is a losing strategy. So just recap. I mean, this is the basics.
So the basics. I want you eating real food. Okay. Did it exist 100 years ago? Is the ingredient label this gigantic paragraph?
Or is it 4 or 5 items?
Or is it 4 or 5 items, or just maybe just one, because it's it's an apple, it's a banana, it's an avocado, right? It's a piece of chicken, it's an egg. That's an ingredient. It is the ingredient. And then start listening to your body. Are you really hungry, physiologically hungry, or are you anxious,
Thirsty.
bored? Is this just a craving that you're having?
Did you eat too quickly and your body hasn't caught up yet with the...
Right.
We didn't cover that. That's a good one to go over.
Yeah. So when you sit down to eat, enjoy your food. Don't be distracted when you're eating, because you tend to overeat when you do that. Put down your fork in between bites. Talk to the person. If you have somebody with you, talk to them, and then you'll find that you eat less food. You'll be full quicker than normal. And so I just tell people to eat when you're hungry and stop as soon as you are no longer hungry, not until you're full. If you feel full, you have eaten too much. And if you stop at the point of where you no longer feel hungry, good. Get up, leave, don't eat anymore, because guess what? You can eat again when you feel hungry.
Yeah. And I'm the youngest of 4 boys, so you used to make fun of me, and I've done a lot better, but I used to eat so quickly. And that was a learned behavior because the food was thrown on the table, and four boys fought for it, and I was the youngest, so I can eat incredibly fast. And I tend to overshoot. My body doesn't have a chance to tell me I'm full until I'm stuffed.
That's a behavior that you have.
But you've taught me to eat a little bit, and then we're talking when we eat, and then I continue to eat. So I make my meal time a little bit longer. Well, lo and behold, I'm able to tell my hunger cues a lot better before I actually feel stuffed. I actually will feel full, and I stop. And I had to learn that behavior. And I'm not uncomfortable. I'm not dieting. I just slowed it down a little bit so my body's hunger cues could catch up to where, we didn't evolve to eat 1,000 calories in 2 minutes, but I was. And
actually, when you sit down to rest, your body gets into that state of rest and digest, and you're not in that panic, stressed out mode like a lot of people are eating these days. They're traveling, they're eating their lunch in their car while they're driving down the road, and just road rage and shoving stuff in their mouth, and they tend to overeat, when they're doing that. And you're not going to digest your food very well in that state, because your body is stressed, and it's going to be spending its efforts trying to keep you alive, right? Because you're stressed for whatever reason and thinks you're under attack. And so it's not going to digest your food very well.
I like to make fun of the Europeans because they tend to be too casual when it comes to work. For me, because Americans were hard driven, but that relaxed attitude really works well for their food.
Look at Europeans,
yeah,
and look at us,
and they're catching up. Because they're starting to adapt what we do as far as the poor quality food, but they do eat much more slowly. The waiter times the meal. Our restaurants are trying to get you in and out as quickly as possible.
Right, I know. So again, to recap. Eat real food, listen to your hunger cues, slow down.
Don't eat out.
Slow down and enjoy your food. Be very diligent if you are to eat out, and really, it's hard. It's hard to eat healthy when you eat out. So if you can avoid it and make your own lunch and bring it, you might want to do that. Food is information. Give your cells the information they need so your body can work like it was designed to.
And you'll never have to diet again.
Right. All right, guys. Well, that's it for the basics.
Mm-hmm.
And we will take a deeper dive into the details of the micros, macros, phytonutrients, and everything else. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
I don't take nothing that a doctor don't prescribe. I don't do